He runs to his bedroom, my parents' room. My mother had been shot and killed. Once he went to prison, I never talked to him again.
Wow, that's unbelievable. I'm kind of in shock right now.
They didn't know what to think of Roxx Gang. They thought we were freaking transvestites, you know?
Shit,
Did you
Kevin.
hear about Tammy Down's girlfriend,
Yes.
man?
Oh my fucking God.
Finally, some people did start to come to Florida, and Virgin Records was one of them. The night before he was supposed to come down to Florida to start pre-production on what would become Love Him and Leave Him
Yep.
was Eric Haz's accident. My second night in Los Angeles, I got to go to the Whiskey and go to Keith Richards' album release party because things just drastically changed overnight with
Right.
grunge, you know?
Right.
So we managed to sell 250,000 records. Some guys are like, oh, it's all about the music. I won't lie to you, man. I wanted to freaking wear the clothes. I wanted the girls. I wanted the parties. Hair metal fans are the most loyal fans, but they do not want to see you change. I don't want to be 40 years old and singing Too Cool for School. My main motivation, besides chicks, was I just wanted to be able to provide the same escape for some kid in a shitty situation that music had provided for me.
The hair metal guru from Warren to Crew. The hair metal guru. Never forget Charlie too.
Welcome to the Hair Metal Guru. My name is Anthony. They call me the Guru. And holy shit, right next to me is Kevin Steele, the founder and lead vocalist of one of my favorite bands of all time, Roxx Gang. Put out the album Things You've Never Done Before in 1988, and I have done everything that I could on the channel to promote that band that album. And he has gone on to form the Mojo Gurus out of the ashes of Roxx Gang. And so it is a pleasure to welcome Kevin Steele to the show. Welcome, brother.
How you doing, Brian? Two gurus.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, hey, again, pleasure to have you on. Now here's where I'd like to start. And I've always said that people who dedicate their lives to music, and I was never a musician, but I've done, I do this channel, I do so much, and you have dedicated your life to music. So, what was your musical beginnings like, and when did you kind of know that, hey, music is something different for me versus, other people like music, but you knew that it meant more to you?
There was always music playing in my house as a little kid. And when I was about, I guess I must have been about six when I'm showing my age here, but when the Monkees first appeared on television. And I remember this particular episode where the Monkees were in Paris and Davy Jones was getting chased all around the Eiffel Tower by a bunch of screaming girls. And when they caught him, they ripped his shirt off. And at 6 years old, I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be Davy Jones getting my shirt ripped off by a bunch of pretty girls. And I had really, up until the time I was about 8, I had an ideal childhood.
Okay.
Then things went south fast. When I was 8 years old, my father, who's an attorney, he'd been a prosecutor. By the time I was 8, he was a municipal judge. And one night when I was 8, my brother and I were asleep upstairs. My father was in his den, his study, reading up on a case. And he heard a noise and he went to check on me and my brother Brett. As he was coming down the stairs, he said he heard a pop, pop. He got to the bottom of the steps. Directly to his left is the front door. The door's closing. He runs to his bedroom, my parents' room. My mother had been shot and killed.
Oh my God.
And so I woke up to a house full of policemen. Um, and from there, things took a bad turn for me and my brother. My father remarried, and it was like a wicked stepmother situation.
Right.
And music became music became a really big escape from my shitty existence. And I had this Italian pal in like junior high, Mike Battaglia. And one day at our library, you could play records, listen with headphones.
Yep.
And he brought Mott the Hoople, Mott, Lou Reed Transformer, and David Bowie Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust. And they were like spacemen, you know? And it just took me away. And it sounds corny, but when I started, when I found that I already knew what I wanted to do, like I told you from when I was,
Yeah.
but by the time I found out that I actually had some kind of talent for it,
Yeah.
my main motivation, besides chicks, was I just wanted to be able to provide the same escape for some kid in a shitty situation that music had provided for me. And as far as that goes, I know from letters I've received over the years that, you know, to some whatever scale that I've done that, you know, and that makes me feel really good. That's what it was all about for me.
I was
Besides
probably
besides the lifestyle,
right.
I got no grand, you know, some guys are like, oh, it's all about the music. I won't lie to you, man. I wanted to freaking wear the clothes. I wanted the girls. I wanted the parties. That all came.
Yeah. And I'm sure I mean, who didn't want that? And I think people who said they didn't were
They're
lying
lying.
or lying. Exactly.
They're lying.
Um, well, just so you know, I was one of those kids because I was 16 when things you've never done before came out, and that was, you know, not to get into my story, but I had an alcoholic stepfather and all that, and music became my escape. And so you were one of the artists that helped me to do that. So that's one of the reasons I wanted you on the channel. Um, and you don't have to go into this, but did they find out? I mean, what happened with your mom and the person?
So
You,
for years, this went unsolved. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. This was
yep,
a big case up there. My father was a municipal judge, so it was like headline news, you know.
sure,
And for years, it went unsolved. And eventually, we got away from my stepmother and went to live with my mother's parents. Now, my father said, you can have custody of the boys if you move to Florida, because his parents had already retired and moved to Florida. And if you moved to Florida, so my parents could see the boys, you know.
right,
So my mom's Italian. That's the Italian side of my family. And they had a huge family. They gave up everything to, you know, they were devastated when my mother died. She was their only kid.
yep,
And the only thing that really kept them going was her children, me and Brett, you know.
yep.
And so they immediately said yes and sold their house and moved down to Florida. And I'd been living there probably 2 years. And the Cleveland police came down and said, we're going to make an arrest. And it was pretty shocking, man. It turns out that my father had hired, he knew a lot of shady people from being a defense attorney.
Yep.
He hired these two Irish gangsters from Cleveland, the Kilbane brothers. And they hired the trigger man, and it all came out. My father went to prison, died in prison.
Oh my God. I have no, I mean, I thought I knew, I mean, a lot about your hit, but I didn't. Wow. That's unbelievable. I'm kind of in shock right now.
Yeah, well, I never talked about this for years and years. And then I was doing an interview one time, and it just came. The girl that was interviewing me was actually I'd known her for years,
Sure.
and I felt very comfortable with her. And it came pouring out of me, and it was like a weight was lifted off me. And now I find it cathartic. It's almost, I don't know, it's therapeutic to for me to talk about it.
Absolutely.
But it
So
is what it is.
have you, and we don't need to get, but have you talked to your father since he went to jail? Has he ever opened up about anything? And if you don't want to answer that, I completely
I
get it.
talked to him once I moved to Florida. I talked to him a couple of times, and that was before he was arrested. Once he went to prison, I never talked to him again.
Okay. And you said he's passed away now, right? Okay.
He
Okay.
died of cancer in prison, so
Sure.
karma.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I appreciate you sharing that, and man, I just I can't believe it, and my heart goes out to you guys. I can't imagine having to go through
It was a
that.
long time ago, but
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, okay.
Kind of a bummer way to start off.
No, no, hey, man, and I've talked to I talked to Drew Rose, or it was Drew Hanna from Wildside for a couple hours, and he really opened up about a lot of stuff. So I mean, we'll get into the music and get into the good times, but I mean, I asked about your childhood, and that obviously that's a main part of it. So I appreciate it. Appreciate you telling us that story, because that's
Yes, and music has always been a huge, um, before everything went to shit, both my parents had, my mother was a school teacher until she got pregnant with me. My
sure.
father had done some teaching too, and it was, it was very strange for me because I loved both my parents. My father, until I, until we found out all this, my father was a good father to me.
Yep.
And, so it was like losing your mom, and then it was like losing your dad, but it was like I never knew him.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was like, I don't know. But anyways, they instilled this as teachers, at a very young age, they instilled a love of reading to me, which I think it's went a long way helping me with my songwriting.
Sure.
If you're well read, it helps.
Yep.
And for the longest time, books were my escape. Then music came along, and I wanted to be Mark Bolan.
Right.
I love T-Rex, Mott the Hoople. Ian Hunter was a huge influence on me. Alice Cooper.
Yep. So
And as I got a little older, I started getting into more like blues and R&B based rock and roll, like the Stones and Zeppelin and
yep.
that kind of stuff. But I always loved the New York Dolls. It's been a sad week for me. David Joe
Yes.
Hanson's passing. He was one of my heroes.
Right.
Um, I loved all that era, like around 72, 73. Lou Reed, the Dolls, the Stooges, T-Rex, Mott the Hoople. Those were my big bands back then. That's when I really fell in love with rock and roll.
Right. So you start liking all these rock bands, and when did the first concept of, hey, I'm gonna start a band? When did that come about?
So I'm living with my grandparents now,
Yep.
and my grandfather was a tough bird from there was a Little Italy in Cleveland, 5 Points. And he was a tough guy. A lot of the guys he went to school with ended up in the mob and stuff. And I was growing my hair, and where my grandfather would look at me and go, Kevin, I didn't know better. He'd go, what a dandy. And he'd go, just like the Twisted Sister video, he'd go, what are you going to do with your life? And I go, I'm going to be a rock star, Pops. And he'd go, you don't even have a band. So I graduated high school. In high school was my first band. And we did a talent show. And but I was living in Venice, Florida. I don't know. Are you familiar with Florida at all?
I mean, I've been there twice, but Not a
Mid to late 70s, there was nothing in Venice, Florida. The
sure.
interstate didn't run down there. It was palmettos and alligators. And I knew if I stayed, so I graduated high school, and the last thing I wanted to do was go to college.
Right.
My grandparents had high hopes for me to go to college. Like I said, my father was an attorney, his father was an attorney. Um, I didn't, I hated school. And then one day I had an epiphany, and I was like, my grandparents said, well, if you go to school, pay for it, I don't want, I had this epiphany one day. If I move up to Gainesville to go to college, there's got to be 1,000 guitar players in a college town.
Sure.
Okay, I want to go to college. They were thrilled to death. I felt like a real shitheel. I had this ulterior motive, the whole time. But I went up there, and sure enough, I met the guitar player that eventually I started a band that evolved into Roxx Gang.
This isn't Eric Carroll yet, or
Yes,
is it
yes,
is?
I met Eric Carroll.
Okay. I was because I wanted to know about that meeting. So
That's
you
not a
meet him and
tragic story. Roxx, my life has been a real roller coaster. I had some very highs, but it's had some very lows. And
can you
Eric
get
was
into
like,
the like meeting Eric and then and like you two?
yeah, so I
You know,
get to a band in Gainesville, and the guitar player said was from the St. Petersburg area, and he said all of a sudden one night at practice, I know this guitar player and he wants to join our band, and he's great. He's way better than I am. So this guy shows up in this custom van, and he's got this dude carrying his guitars for him and stuff. I was like, wow. And he was great. And we hit it off, and we became like best friends. And we eventually dumped the rest of the band. But me and Eric, the nucleus of the band, we went on to, find people more compatible to our vision,
sure,
and then moved from Gainesville to St. Pete, where he was from.
sure.
So Eric liked to party. He
Yep.
liked to drink Jack Daniels, and he liked to,
Yep.
and he was a fisherman. He used to carry a fishing pole in his van, and he had snook holes. He wouldn't even tell anybody. He was very secretive about it.
Right.
And one night he was fishing off a bridge, and nobody knows what happened for sure. But he was out there with a guy who will remain nameless, that he owed a lot of money for blow.
Right.
And somehow Eric fell off that bridge. I think they just got a little too effed up, and Eric fell.
Right.
A lot of rumors were swirling at the time that this guy might have pushed him. But how are you going to get your money if you do that?
Right.
Well, anyways, he fell and broke his neck and killed himself. And that was a huge blow, because things were just starting to roll. We were starting to get some national press. Kerrang, the English caught on to us quick, and they were writing glowing reviews of it. We put out we had some demos out and stuff, and
Was that the Love 'Em and Leave 'Em demo? He was
not
on
yet,
that,
not
right?
yet, not yet.
Okay. No.
So,
Okay.
so Carl Kennedy, do you know that name? He was the drummer. You ever hear of the band The Rods?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, he's the drummer for The Rods.
Yep.
Well, he had produced Anthrax, Urge Overkill, a bunch of heavy bands, right? And he was looking for something with a little more. I hate to say Roxx Gang was hardly commercial, but he was looking for somebody with a little more that could reach a bigger audience,
Yep.
maybe.
Yep.
Wider.
Yep.
So he heard our demos. He was impressed. The night before he was supposed to come down to Florida to start pre-production on what would become Love 'Em and Leave 'Em,
Yep.
was Eric has his accident. So Carl was very cool being in a band himself. He was like, I can't imagine what it'd be like. My bandmates are like brothers, and I can't imagine. And as soon as you guys get things back together, you call me and I'll be there. Well, Eric and I had a mutual friend, Jeff Taylor. He's the blonde guitar player on the
Yep.
album cover behind you.
Yep.
And the guy on my right, your left, he's the guy behind the end.
Sure.
So he would call up this guy way over here behind the end and gang. So would call up, Eric, man, I want to be in Roxx Gang. And Eric would go, you got to ask Kevin. It's his band. And he would call me up and he'd go, Kevin, I want to be in Roxx Gang. And I go, you got to ask Eric. It's his band.
Right.
Because Eric was good enough to keep for us to be a one guitar band. Okay. So when Eric died, this was Jeff's big chance, right?
Sure.
So he gets in there and Carl says, I hate shit on Jeff, but truth's the truth. Uh, Carl said, look, you need not another guitar player as in get rid of Jeff. You need an additional guitar player because Eric's one thing, Jeff's another. You need an additional guitar. So
Sure.
we knew that kid, Wade Hayes, the little half Asian kid on the cover, and that kid was
Yep.
Eric had seen him playing a bar one night and he said, man, I met this guy. He's better than I am. And I loved Eric. And I would always, I didn't like even hearing him say that, right? No way.
Right.
So at the time, the guy who played bass for us at the time was having some kind of marital problems or something, and he left the band. And Wade actually came in as our bass player. The bass player took care of his problems, joined the band again, and Wade moved to guitar. But Wade was the sweetest, most humblest, most talented guy. But he's one of those guys. You add alcohol, those T-shirts, add alcohol, instant asshole.
Yep.
So he was in the band and out of the band. But when Eric died, and Carl told me you need an additional guitar player. I called him. He's in the band. That kid was a shredder. All those the great leads you hear on the first album is all
Yep.
Wade.
Yep.
And then we just took off from there. Carl made we made the Love and Leave 'em. It was originally just a demo that we were going to shop.
Yep.
And then after we got signed, and after things you'd never done before, Paris Records put out Love 'em and Leave 'em,
Yep.
released it as a CD, and it was interesting for the fans to hear the evolution of where some of those songs started. And before they got the Bo Hill treatment.
Right. Could you kind of go into maybe a little bit of detail about about playing the Florida, because it's not like there was a huge Florida scene, right? But you guys built something there. Could you maybe talk about like building a fan base in Florida, whereas everybody else was heading to LA?
A lot of people are disappointed here as I get over the years, I've gotten fan mail where kids are going, oh, man, in my mind, I picture this big glam scene and no, not
Right.
where I live.
Right.
They were into Southern rock and they didn't know what to think of Roxx Gang. They thought we were freaking transvestites,
Right.
There was no glam rock scene. When Roxx Gang first came out, you got to remember, we didn't get signed to Virgin until like late 87 or early 88,
Yep.
but we'd been together for probably close to 5 years before that.
You
And so
formed in '82, right?
the original lineup probably.
Sure.
So that was before people had MTV. That was before people had seen Motley Crue or
Yeah,
Poison or whoever.
that's
And
right.
we were years before that. But because it took us till then to get signed, a lot of people thought we were jumping on a bandwagon.
Right.
Please, we started a lot. We were out there way before Motley Crue, way before Poison,
Sure.
definitely at least before the country was hip to them.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and people didn't know what to think of us down in Florida. And there was no original music scene. You heard of Sabotage.
Yeah.
Okay, the Sabotage is from my area.
Yep.
And there was a band called Stranger.
Okay.
And that, and Stranger, Sabotage, Roxx Gang were the clubs in our area was all cover songs.
Sure.
And we came in and we're like, we were not playing cover songs, you know? I mean, we played in our encores, maybe we do Jet Boy or Personality Crisis or something, or Search and Destroy by the Stooges, but our sets were all original. And we were it didn't take long, by the mid 80s, it's getting towards the end of the everybody started having the big hair and the wild clothes, but we were
Yeah.
doing it way before. And people did not know what to think of us. And a lot of people did not like the looks of us.
Sure. Sure.
And it was pretty crazy. We used to play in the very beginning, we used to play some pretty rough places. We used to play this upstairs bottle club where you bought your own booze,
Right.
brought your own bottles in, and we didn't start playing until it was after hours. Like you started playing at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. You got done at 6 o'clock in the morning or something. I'm walking out in silver spandex and mascara running down my face. And
Right.
I'm hearing the roosters crowing, and Florida truckers are driving by going, what the, look at that. And there would be fights, bikers fighting by the pool tables with cue sticks, and we would keep on playing, and we definitely paid some dues. And then we started making trips because no one was ever going to see us.
Sure.
So we started making road trips up to New York and play at L'Amour's, a couple of places up there trying to get seen.
Yep.
And finally, some people did start to come to Florida, and Virgin Records was one of them. I remember we did a showcase one night at a place called Club 19, and not only was Virgin Records there, but there was a guy from Virgin Publishing, and the guy from Virgin Publishing told the people from Virgin Records, "I'm going to sign him to a publishing deal, whether you sign him to a record deal or not," and that like clinched it for us.
Sure.
And that was that.
Had there
Went out
ever
to Hollywood.
had there ever been a thought before that of let's move out to California? That's what everybody else is doing.
Well, we thought about it, and you always hear, you hear stories like I think Poison was from like Pennsylvania or something, and they moved out to, and so many bands moved out to Los Angeles because that's where the music business is, Los Angeles, and to a lesser extent New York for
Right.
that type of music. But Roxx Gang, uh, we were dirt poor,
Right.
and had we moved to Los Angeles without any kind of support system, which we did not have,
Right.
and with the personalities of the guys in Roxx Gang, and by that I mean their, I don't want to call it addictions, but their predilections.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we would have self-destructed if we would have moved out there
Sure.
and just tried to live off some girl's good graces, you know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So, and that's one of the reasons I've always felt Roxx Gang really suffered from bad timing. And because we because we didn't have the money to move to Los Angeles, and because we had to stick it out in Florida and try and get people to come see us, it was why we didn't get signed until 87, where
Right.
we probably could have got signed a couple of years earlier and had a platinum album. But
Yes.
when we were recording things you never done before, I remember we recorded at a studio in Hollywood called the Enterprise. One of the co-owners was Billy Mummy. I don't know how old you are, but do you remember, a television program called Lost in Space?
Yeah, I
Well,
remember hearing about that.
Billy Mummy was Will Robinson, the
Oh, okay.
youngest kid, and
Right.
he was part of a duo. They put out this novelty record. I can't remember the name of the duo that you know that song, fish heads, roly poly fish heads. Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Okay.
Billy Mummy, right?
Okay.
So here's Will Robinson walking through the lobby. That was kind of a trip for me. And I can remember sitting in the lobby while somebody was doing drum tracks or guitar tracks, and I wasn't needed. And I was watching MTV in the lobby, and I remember, people think of Roxx Gang as an '80s band, but before our album ever came out, while we were recording it, I was watching I was watching "Smells Like Teen Spirit" and whatever the first Soundgarden video was, and we had no idea, but it was over for us before we even got started
Right.
because things just drastically changed overnight with
Right.
grunge.
Right.
So we managed to sell 250,000 records, which for a no-name band from Florida was pretty good. But I really think I think in my heart we would have went platinum if we got signed 2 years earlier.
If things you've never done before had come out in 1986,
It would
before
have been,
it would have
yeah,
drastically changed everything.
yeah.
Could could you kind of what and so you guys didn't move to California, but you made a huge name. I remember there's a documentary, and I think the band was called Tough Luck, and they
Yeah.
talked about modeling everything that they did on Roxx Gang because they were in.
Really?
So was there a moment where you thought like, holy shit, we're in Florida, but it's going to happen. Like maybe you see the clubs just start, from being having not very many people to being packed. When did you kind of realize, even though like you said, it should have happened earlier, when did you feel like, man, we have a chance to do this?
Well, it felt that way when the record came out, and our
Okay.
live shows we were packing them in. We Virgin sent us over to the UK. I remember selling out the Astoria with Faith No More was right down the street, but we sold out the Astoria. And like I said, the English caught on to us quick. And
This is from Kerrang.
yeah,
Kind of hard to, but for the single, and then I think you guys were playing shows over there. But anyway,
and we were pretty psyched. It looked like things were happening. But like I said, at radio, I mean, program directors like overnight were saying, all this stuff, we're not playing anymore.
right,
This is what we're playing. And it was all, grunge.
yeah, right. Um, could we talk a little bit about so you get signed to Virgin and you get Bo Hill to record things you've never done before. Could you maybe talk a little bit about like the recording of the album and how that went and what it was like working with him?
Yeah. So Virgin, the good thing about Virgin was they had a lot of money and they were very free with it. And they said, who do you want to produce?
Yep.
I mean, they gave us our choice. Well, we loved Bo had produced Warrant and Winger, which we weren't really big fans of, but he'd also produced Kicks and Alice Cooper, and everybody in our band loved Kicks.
Yep.
And Midnight Dynamite had just come out, and we were all loved that album, and we
Yep.
loved the sound of it. And we said, "Can you get us Bo Hill?" Well, that was another. I don't know if that was a poor judgment because Bo couldn't work with us for I mean, it was almost a year before he could.
Okay.
So there was a big delay there.
Sure.
Um, Bo was a great guy. Bo had some excellent. I'm very open. I'm the major songwriter, and I'm willing to listen to anybody's input. I'll tell them if I don't dig it, I'll
Right.
tell them.
Right.
But if I feel somebody's got something to contribute to my songs and improve it in any ways, hey, I'm all for it. And Bo made some arrangement uh, suggestions, and we were strictly a guitar band. He added a little bit of keyboards here and
Yep.
there, icing.
Yep.
And Bo really contributed in a very positive, very. I loved working with him. He was a great guy, and I thought he really. I thought his input was. Um, yeah, he improved a couple of the songs.
Sure.
And so here's a funny story. He was going to, do you remember that singer Fiona in the
Yeah.
80s?
That's
Well,
right.
Bo was going out with Fiona.
That's right.
And so there's a song on Things You Never Done Before called Need Your Sex.
Yeah.
And you can hear some back and forth.
Yep. Yep.
That's me and Fiona.
Oh shit.
It was kind of weird because there's Bo in the control room, and me
Right.
and Fiona in the booth. And but that was a nice little touch for that song.
Right. Right. So you guys had two singles and two videos.
So so,
Oh,
uh, so so we were like kids in a kid. We're these guys from bumfuck Florida, and we're out in Los Angeles. It's like a dream come true for me. I'm making, you know, I had people telling me my whole life, man, it's never gonna. This is a pipe dream. It's never gonna happen. And as dedicated as I was to it, you you know the odds, and
right.
so you have these doubts. Man, what if it's. And so when we got signed, it was like, I was walking on air. So we go out to California. My very Virgin Records, Keith Richards put out his first solo album, Talk is Cheap, on Virgin Records. My second night in Los Angeles, I got to go to the Whiskey and go to Keith Richards' album release party. Every rock star in Hollywood was there. I'm just trying to act like it's not impressing me too much. I'm trying to act like not just like a fanboy.
Right.
I remember going in the bathroom and I'm standing at the urinal, and out of the corner of my eye, in my peripheral, I see it seemed like a little kid was using the stall the next to me, and what the hell? And I finished first and I backed up. It was Ronnie James Dio.
Oh, no way.
He was so short. But anyway, everybody was there. Everybody was there
Yeah.
to pay, homage to Keith.
Yeah.
Keith was upstairs holding court. So, so Virgin, they got us Bo Hill. Then it was time to make a video. They got us Nigel Dick for No Easy Way Out. He made Sweet Child of Mine,
Yes.
right?
That's right.
Um, our second video, Scratch My Back, we used Ralph Simon. He did a bunch of the early LA Guns. He
Right.
freaking ripped me off too. Listen to this. I went to the UK. When we went to the UK to play, we'd already done the first two video. We just worked with Ralph on Scratch My Back. And so he had an office. Ralph's South African, but he was living in London. And I go over to his office and to hang out one afternoon. And we're Florida boys, and we smoked a lot of weed. Our lawyer, our entertainment lawyer, is from New York, and he'd come down every once in a while, and he'd come into our rehearsal. I have an old two-car garage in back of my house that we converted into our rehearsal space, and he'd come back there and watch us, and he'd go, "Man, I represent some reggae bands, but they've got nothing on you guys, right?" And he would have us buy him weed all the time, and And in England, we couldn't find we there was all this hash, but there was no reefer. And they would crush up the hash and smoke it in cigarettes. And it was hard on the throat, especially for a singer, you know.
Right.
And I remember being in Ralph's office, and I had this. At the time, there was talk of a third video, and it was going to be Red Rose.
Right.
And I go, I see us on the steps of like a antebellum Southern mansion, and rose petals raining down on us, right? And Ralph is going, "Oh, that's a great visual, you know." Well, we never got our third video, but LA Guns put out Ballad of Jane.
That's right.
Here, freaking leaves. They weren't rose petals, but they were leaves raining down. Ralph Simon, you son of a bitch.
No way. Uh, I got
um,
it. Oh, go ahead.
and the shows were going great, and we were, you know, when you get signed, especially coming from nothing, I mean, you get a little cocky, you
Sure.
know, you got a record deal. A lot of people have been telling you it's a pipe dream, you know, and you know, it's all you can do to do. Oh, fuck you, it happened, you know, and and but I'm telling you, even though the shows were going good, we weren't getting a whole lot of radio play and stuff because, and then it just overnight, I mean, everything, the rug was just pulled out from under us. It was just grunge, and nobody wanted to hear anything about a glam band, you
Right.
know? And it stung for us too, because by the time we got signed, this whole, you know, hair metal scene was huge, right?
Right.
But I didn't really, if you listen to Roxx Gang's first album, like, yeah, two of the guys got big haystack hairdos, and there's some blistering 80s guitar on there. But if you listen to my songs, a lot of them are kind of, you know, Ball and Chain and Red Rose and a lot of those songs, they're not your typical, they're not like unskinny bop.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I didn't, we got lumped in with all those bands, and I really, I can see why, you know, but I would just, it used to kind of irk me because I really felt that we were a little, you know, like I said, my glam influences were from the 70s, you
Sure.
know, and sure, my guitar player was influenced by the time. I mean, you can't not be influenced by the times,
Yep.
you know. So, you know, I could see it, but I just didn't feel like we were like, you know, Warrant or Winger or a lot of those bands, you know.
And vocally, you were dramatically different. I mean, you had this gruff and, not pretty voice, but those, oh shit, there you got some balloons.
That's
But I loved that.
because I can't sing, man.
I, I I was always into that rougher type of vocal versus the pretty high pitched,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
mentioned
Listen,
oh, go ahead.
I never thought, you know, I was like, man, I don't really have that great a voice. I'm a rock and roll shouter, you know? And it used to worry me, you know, but like a lot of my influences, you know, like, you know, David Johansen or Iggy or a lot of these guys, they weren't like they didn't have a great range. They weren't like they didn't have pretty voices, you know, so I just never let it stop me, you know. I got my share of criticism over the years, but I never let it stop me. And even when Roxx Gang first started, even before we were called Roxx Gang, and we did play cover songs and playing the B circuit clubs,
Yep.
and we did do cover songs. Like I never tried to sing it like the original artist.
Sure.
A lot of times I couldn't sing it like the
Right,
original
right.
artist, but I always just and because of that, that's something else I've heard over the years is my voice is very easily identifiable, you know.
Oh, totally.
And people know if people are familiar with the band, they know it's me singing when the song comes on, you know.
Absolutely.
I I like to think that's a good thing. I don't
Yes.
know.
You mentioned that the first two, and I loved the two singles, "No Easy Way Out" and "Scratch My Back." But you also mentioned "Red Rose" and "Ball and Chain." Those songs and that lyrical content was so different for those two songs when they came out, and I thought both of them were screaming for a video. "Red Rose" and "Ball and Chain" like had the old West theme kind of to it. And I'm like, man, if you had a budget, you could have made, a video that would have just separated you guys from everybody. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. Those two songs there should have been four singles on that album.
Yeah, well, when you're a baby band from bumfuck Florida and you get signed to one of the biggest labels there is, like, you can fight and try and make yourself heard, but you don't really have the last say in a lot of things, you know?
Sure.
The Virgin is spending, by the time Virgin made an album, two videos, put us on the road with tour support and a big coach bus,
Right.
to fly us to England to play. You're talking about like $1 million
Sure.
investment. And
Sure.
so they're not always listening to some kid,
Sure.
in his 20s that's going, I think we should maybe be doing this other song next,
Right.
And
Right.
I had an A&R guy, Larique Weymouth. He's brother to Tina Weymouth in the Talking Heads.
Yep.
Okay, he was one of our A&R guys at Virgin. After Things You Never Done Before came out, and we cut demos for the songs that would become the Voodoo You Love.
Yes.
And he said, "You're not pushing the envelope." And he said, "This is what I want." He played us the Divinals, "I Touch Myself." And
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck are you, like, do you even understand where we're coming from? Like, you get Roxx Gang playing. It was discouraging,
Sure. Sure.
to say the least.
Before we get to the Voodoo You Love, who did you get to, did you get, what kind of tours did you get for things you've never done before? Did you get anything that you were like, yes, this is going to work? Because I'm not sure who you toured with.
We toured with, of all bands, we toured with Warrant for a little
Okay.
while.
Okay.
And we came this close, and I mean this close to getting a leg of an Alice Cooper tour, which would have been a dream for me,
Sure.
but it did not happen.
Sure.
And yeah, besides that, we just worked our ass off in all the big rock clubs, and in those days there was big rock clubs. But shortly thereafter, all the big rock clubs started closing. The whole scene changed.
So what was the with Virgin after things you've never done before, and you just mentioned starting to record the songs that would become on the Voodoo You Love. What happened with Virgin after the debut album came out?
So we were disappointed. Like I said, we sold 250,000 records,
Yep.
but we thought that we should have sold a lot more.
Right.
And we did not think we were Virgin's first hard rock signing.
Sure.
Okay. And the good, like I said, on the plus side, they had lots of money. On the negative side, I don't think they knew what they were doing as far as promoting us. They
Right.
didn't have a clue. When we made the video for Scratch My Back, I went to a WIA convention in Miami, and I was sitting outside this room. I was supposed to meet with the two of the vice presidents of Virgin, and I hear all this clapping in this room. We're sitting in the hallway. So the door opens and all these people come pouring out, and they're all smiling at us. And we get in there and they go, "Did you hear all that clapping?" And yeah, and they go, "That was for you. We premiered your video in there, right?" But they said, "I think we need to take out some of your close-ups because it's hard to imagine that voice is coming out of that face, right?" And I was like, as far as marketing goes, like, all the big bands, I mean, that's part of it, is appeal to,
Yes.
it's like that. in the 80s, I mean, that should have been a selling point, not
Oh,
something they were trying to downplay. So, yeah, there was a lot of. So, anyways, we wanted out. We wanted out from Virgin. And
sure.
our lawyer negotiated. We have a very shrewd lawyer, I will say, and he negotiated a release where we didn't owe Virgin a penny, okay? Which could have been a lot different. I've seen other bands where they end up owing their label money, right? Because Virgin put a lot of money into us. So after that, uh, I think it was Columbia. I don't know. We had a lot of interest, right? But then nobody, all of a sudden, our style of music was just fell so out of fashion.
Yeah.
All the interest that was in us was disappeared, right?
Yep. Yep.
And it was years before we put out that. So we kept, we kept the band together. There was a lineup, some personnel changes, but I kept the whole thing going, right?
Yep.
It was my life. And years went by, and there's producers that wanted to work with us, but it's not, no labels. They were like, well, what do you want to do? Hair band type stuff. We're not really a hair band. When you listen to our new stuff, it's not really hair metal. If you listen, we just had all this baggage, So, and we team up with Paris Records, right? Tom Mathers.
Right.
He wanted to put out, and Voodoo You Love was really demos. The recordings on the Voodoo You Love were never even meant for commercial release. They
Sure.
were demos that we recorded back to Carl Kennedy's studio in Scranton,
Yep.
and we recorded an album's worth of songs. And Tom said, "Let's put it out." So we put out the Voodoo You Love, and that was like, what? There's like 5 years or something in between things you never done before in the Voodoo You Love.
Voodoo You Love came out in 1995. I think, if I'm right.
So, it was tough going. It was like the one thing that kept us going. Like we were a good band, and we had good songs, and we had good, and so our live shows kept us going. The
Sure.
people came to our shows, but the record industry did really not want to know about us.
Right.
And so we did. After that, we put out a few things on Paris, and finally, I always said, I I make a lot of enemies saying this. People don't like to hear this. A lot of people don't like to hear this, but because I'll tell you something, hair metal fans are the most loyal fans, but they do not want to see you change.
Sure.
They
Sure.
do not want to see you change.
I get you.
So my heroes, I always felt like if you're going to be in a glam band, you have a certain window.
Right.
When I was a kid, there was a song, that song, Gary Glitter.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, Rock and Roll Part Two, Rock and Roll, hey. Then I loved that song as a kid. And then I saw what Gary Glitter looked like, right? And I said, Lord, I don't know, I got to either mature or get out before I'm that age,
Sure. Sure.
And so as I started to get older, and frankly, my musical tastes were maturing, you know, a lot of stuff that I liked when I was a teenager that influenced me in the songs I wrote for things you never done before. I wasn't really listening to a lot of that music anymore.
Right.
I was exploring got heavily into the blues and rhythm and blues. I love all that old. I have a huge blues collection,
Sure.
and I didn't want to be a 40-year-old, let alone I see these guys, my peers, guys who came up in the same era as me, and they're still freaking, wearing makeup and squeezing into tight pants, and they got a gut hanging over their freaking studded belt. And it's embarrassing, man.
Yeah.
And I just think you have a certain win. If you're going to do glam, you got to do it while you're young and you look good. It's a young man's game, you know? And so,
You aged very well, though.
thank you.
I mean,
Thank you.
you never, you still
I
look
kept the weight off.
like the rock star. So
I
anyway.
still got all my hair and I kept the
Oh,
weight off. God damn it.
yeah.
Still got all my teeth.
Right. Right.
But I've done a lot of hard partying too, so it's been no small feat.
Right.
But I just decided, I it all started with a my old lady was having a birthday party, and we like took over a club one night in St. Petersburg. It was this club. It's no longer in existence, but it was called the Voodoo Lounge, and we took it over and we played under an alias, and we called ourselves the Mojo Gurus Country Rhythm and Blues Review. And
Sure.
we played all this old blues and stuff, and we had a blast, man. And the people really reacted well to it. And I started thinking, and then I kind of regret there was kind of a messy transition from Roxx Gang to the Mojo Gurus because Roxx Gang put out an album called Mojo
Right.
Gurus. And
1998.
this confused a lot of when we decided to call ourselves the Mojo Guru, my new band, the Mojo Gurus, it confused a lot of people,
Yep.
right? And the Mojo Gurus Roxx Gang album was a what big departure from our earlier stuff.
Yes.
There was rockabilly on it, there was blues on it, there was some like glam type blues with fuzz guitars and stuff. And a lot of people were like, what the fuck, But I had to be true to myself and play music that I was into, that's what was doing it for me, And I didn't want to be 40 years old and sing. I'm now in my 60s, okay?
Yeah. Sure.
But at 40 even, I don't want to be 40 years old and singing too cool for school. You know, I don't want to be 50 years old and singing, scratch my back and I need your sex and stuff. It's not flattering, man. It's like, David Bowie didn't stay Ziggy Stardust forever.
Right.
Mott the Hoople got rid of their platform boots and wild suits. David Johansen, matured into the Harry Smiths and Buster, and even the David Johansen band was not, they didn't dress like the New York Dolls, and a lot of Roxx Gang fans were not having it.
Yep.
But I will make that sacrifice. I'm sorry that they didn't like it, but I got to do what moves me, man. I can't play music and be genuine about it and play music that doesn't move me,
Yes.
So I started getting bluesier, and we turned it. So I said, this Roxx Gang thing is not, it just wasn't going anywhere. I had a stint. We had Stacy Blades was in there on guitar for a while, who went on to do a few years with LA Guns,
Yep.
which he would have never got that gig if he hadn't have been in Roxx Gang first.
Right.
Because let me tell you, the Stacy Blades that joined Roxx Gang and the Stacy Blades that left Roxx Gang were two different guitar players.
Right.
But I had to do my thing, and we did the Mojo Gurus, and it allowed me to like really free myself up and just write songs in whatever kind of genre I wanted to, And I just felt like, especially after years of like, once the hair metal stuff started getting knocked by, the whole with grunge and everything, and I just felt like there's so much more to me than
Yeah.
scratch my back, you know what I mean? And I wanted to write some bluesy songs or some rhythm and blues. Like I said, my influences, I would write a song like Fastest Gun in Town and things, and in my head, I'm writing like an Aerosmith type, Back in the Saddle type song.
Of course.
But then, Wade Hayes gets a hold of it and puts in those crazy, and I mean, they were great. They were smoking leads, but it definitely pulled it away from my original vision, I would say.
Sure.
But I went with it because he was so great, and it was the times and stuff, you know.
Sure.
And I'm not a guitar player.
What was that transition like? So I'm assuming you're still in Florida, right? When you decide to go from Roxx Gang to Mojo Gurus. Is that correct? So
Yes.
what was that like as, one day you're playing the clubs, you're Roxx Gang, and the next day, what was that transition like in Florida to change
Well,
Mojo Gurus?
very early on, the Mojo Gurus would open up for Roxx Gang.
Oh, okay.
You know, we don't need an opening act.
Right.
I'd
Right.
go in the dressing room and change my clothes and come back out. And, I'd go up there as the Mojo Gurus lead singer and say, I want to thank Roxx Gang. That singer in Roxx Gang taught me everything I know.
Right.
And there would be some rednecks in some of these Florida bars. He looks just like the singer in the other band.
Right. Right.
But yeah, so that's how it started. And then eventually we phased out Roxx Gang and went completely Mojo Gurus and started opening up for some different type bands. Like I remember there was early gigs where we opened up for like Robin Trower, for
Sure.
instance. We still open up for rock band Nazareth. We opened for, but a lot of bands from back in my day, as opposed to the '80s bands that we used to do shows with, and I was having a ball, so I didn't really care.
When you
I
when
didn't
you
care what people thought.
when
I
you when
didn't
you
care what people thought.
when you played Mojo Gurus concerts, would you still throw in some Roxx Gang just to appease, the old fans, or did you cut ties?
The only, the song on Things, "Race with the Devil."
Yep.
Well, I turned that into like a rockabilly song
Sure.
that the music would be unrecognizable, but it's the same lyrics.
Right.
Other than that, we tried to make a kind of a clean break.
Sure.
People would be in the audience yelling for Roxx Gang,
I'm sure.
uh, but we didn't give it to them.
So now that we're kind of into the Mojo Gurus, and so I think your first album came out in 2004. Can you just talk a little bit about, okay, hey, we're the Mojo Gurus. We're gonna start recording. What was that process like, and getting the band together? Like, how did that work?
Well, it started out with like I said, there'd been a lot of personnel changes even in Roxx Gang by the time we decided to call it quits.
Right.
So the members of the last version of Roxx Gang were really the Mojo Gurus.
Sure.
Then I think, then we got a new bass player, then we got a new guitar player, then we got a new drummer over the years. But I, people talk about our personnel changes too, but like I write the songs,
Yeah.
and as long as I can get along with, as long as I got a songwriting connection with my guitar player, I don't. It never bothered me having to get, you know, I, I, this might sound bad, but I do not suffer fools gladly, right? And there's a lot of fools in rock and roll.
Right.
And I'm not one of those it's my way or the highway kind of guys, but I can only put up with, you read about your hero, you think like the New York Dolls and Johnny Thunders. Oh, how cool is he? But yeah, but when you're in a band with a Johnny Thunders,
Right.
it ain't that cool.
Right.
Yeah, his playing and his personality might have been, but it's so. And anybody will tell you like I love to party, man. So if there's too much, if it's becoming a problem to where I'm saying it's too much, then it's gone overboard. to the detriment of the band, you know.
So substance abuse and not being able to handle that was part of what broke up the original Roxx Gang and led to all the different changes.
It definitely played a, but I'm telling you, the biggest thing was just the change in musical atmosphere. People don't understand if you what it was to be in a band like Roxx Gang or any of these bands that you might consider that, like, overnight things changed
Right.
when grunge came in. So all of a sudden we're not, with a big label, we're not making as much money as we used to.
Right.
Maybe we're not getting our per diems and stuff. And yeah, the partying, on occasion it was a problem. But it is, I mean, we're a rock and roll band. Of course we drank and did drugs.
Right.
There's not many rock bands that don't,
Exactly.
Um, but really, that was not the big problem. Ego of certain members were uh, of a problem from time to time. People thinking they knew all the answers when
Sure.
they didn't have a clue. um, it was it was what it was.
Yeah. So what can you tell me about Mojo Gurus? I mean, was there a point where you guys were like, I mean, were you playing a lot of shows? Was there talks with bigger labels? Was there, the hope of
But
making
we
it?
were always every album we put out. Every Mojo Guru album is on a different label, and
Yes,
each deal was a little bit better than the last one, but they were all on independent labels. There was
sure.
no major label. One time we were up playing in New York, and you know who Jack Douglas is?
Yes, produced
Producer.
Aerosmith. Yep.
Jack Douglas produced Aerosmith, the New York Dolls, Cheap Trick.
Right.
He was the cat that was working with John Lennon on those last albums, right? So this guy's a legend, man. I could go on. I don't even can't even remember all the bands he worked with, right? So and the Mojo Gurus, because we're doing a gig. There's this club in New York called Arlene's Grocery, and Jack Douglas's manager sees us. He said, "Man, these guys." He really dug us. So my brother is my brother has managed my whole career,
Sure.
and when things are tough, he also acts as a road manager, right? So he was with us, and he said, "I think Jack would be interested in producing these guys for his next project, right?" So he came down to Florida, and I'd never been more excited about the prospect of working with somebody. And I've worked with Bo Hill, Carl Kennedy, Tommy Hendrickson, who's Alice Cooper, one of Alice's guitar players, and is a producer himself. Produced Alice. He's produced Lou Reed. Um, but Jack Douglas, this guy's a freaking living legend, man. And he's produced my heroes. And there's some bands, if you listen to the Dolls live and then you listen to their albums, you go, he engineered he didn't produce their original two albums,
Sure.
but he produced the reformed Dolls. But I thought, wow. And he came into our that garage I told you about in
Yep.
back of my house. We call it the Mojo Dojo. And he sat in and he was like, and we were very well rehearsed with these songs. I mean, we'd been playing these songs for months and months live.
Right.
And I said how Bo had all these great suggestions, and I was totally open to them. Well, Jack started. Well, the first night he came in and he was like, "You got a great voice." He goes, "I'm going to be able to get you a great sound." And then he started making all these crazy fucking suggestions about the songs. And then he got sick while he was there, and comes into the studio one day and we had this kind of rockabilly song called Wild Wild Women. And he goes, I had this fever dream. He was drinking NyQuil. And he wanted to put that Orson Welles War of the World intro, a piece of that,
Sure.
in front of Wild Wild Women, which has nothing to freaking do with Martians or anything. And I was like, but he's Jack Douglas.
Sure.
And then he would say, I had another song. I had a Mojo Guru song called Mojo Guru.
Yeah.
It's kind of autobiographical, right? And it was kind of a Ziggy jumps out of his capsule into the chemical haze, too death-defying dance steps ahead of the current craze, surrounded by a cool blues funk, got holes in his arms from shooting brown Chinese junk, black cap bones tied in his corkscrew hair. Hey, that's a Mojo Guru standing over there. So he goes, I want you to add another line to each verse. What? It like totally threw off the whole rhythm of this, like it was wacko.
Yeah.
He started making all these. I came into the studio one day and he had like a big industrial vacuum cleaner and he's got the hose, a big ass hose like this. And right along with my drummer, Tommy's kick, he's going into oh, I did this with Aerosmith, right? So I'm, whatever, man. It's Jack Douglas, he did it. I want to give it the old college try.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the recording, I fucking hated Jack. He was such an asshole. He would go, out of respect to Jack, like he's at the board, right? With the engineer, who he got the engineer sick too. Now he's getting my band sick. Everybody's getting sick, right? Then I don't even want to say the gross shit he would do in there, but okay, so out of respect, he's telling the engineer, so we're being real quiet, sitting on the sofa against the back wall in back of him, right? We're facing his back. And they go, where's all the energy, boys? Because they're being so quiet, right? So then we start getting a little rowdy back there, and you go, I need quiet. Couldn't win with this guy, right? He had some great stories. He told me this story. He said Johnny Thunders contacted him and he wanted to work with Jack. So Johnny gives him this address. And Jack goes downtown in New York looking for the address. Well, here's the number on one side of the address in this building. But the building next to it's got like it should be in between these two buildings, right?
Right.
Well, there's this alley. Can't be in the alley. He walks down the alley. There's this old Cadillac parked in there, and it had curtains in the windows. And he goes, it can't be. He knocks on the window. The curtains pull up. Some chick, junkie,
Yeah.
says, and he goes, is Johnny home? And she goes, wait a minute, I'll see. Inside a car. And he told us all these stories. He said Ron Wood borrowed a bunch of camera. I guess Jack has like an old camera collection.
Right.
And Ronnie borrowed a bunch of them one time and never gave them back. And he had all these cool stories about all these people that, my heroes. And it was entertaining in that sense. But so we did that remake of that Race with the Devil song,
Yes.
the rockabilly version.
What album is this that Jack Douglas is working on?
That sounds Shaking in the Barn, it's called.
Okay, yep. Which
And he
came out in
says,
2005. Okay.
so he says, okay, you're singing all over this album. For Race with the Devil, I want you to just talk it. I want you to just talk the lyrics. I was like, fuck are you talking about, So I did it, and I thought it sounded like shit. And so he would always say, he could tell that I wasn't into a lot of his ideas, right? I've got a very expressive face, I guess. so, and by the end, I wasn't even trying to hide it. I was freaking out on some of this shit. And he would say, look, once I'm gone, you can do whatever you want. It's your album. once I'm gone, you can change anything you want. So as soon as he left, I re-sang like 3 songs, and
Right.
cut that Mojo Guru song out of there because it had been on a previous album anyways. But when he heard it, he liked it so much he wanted to record it again, which I wasn't really down for that anyways. But he said, and then wanted to add that other line to each verse, and so we made a bunch of changes. And the engineer had worked with Jack before on a Cheap Trick record, and he like ratted us. He like called up Jack immediately. They're making all these changes. Well, it's our album. We paid Jack. It's like, by that time I was in my mid 40s, I guess. And I was like, I'm not a kid anymore. I do whatever the fuck I want. If I
Right.
don't like the way someone, you know, but I had never went into a project so excited and come out so disappointed.
Never meet your heroes,
Yeah,
or at least in that case.
I met a few. I met Alice. Listen to this story. I got an Alice Cooper story for you. I had a friend that worked promotion at a radio station, and Alice was coming to town. He's playing at this venue called Ruth Eckerd Hall in Florida, and he says, and they were running this contest. And if you won the contest, you got front row seats to Alice Cooper, and you got to go on his tour bus and meet Alice Cooper. And you also, Alice is an avid golfer. You also won this really nice golf bag that was autographed by Alice. Well, my friend who worked at the radio station is a golfer, and he goes, "Here's the deal. You and your old lady are going to win the contest. You're going to go meet Alice, sit in the front row, and you're going to go meet Alice Cooper after the show, and I'm going to keep the golf bag." I said, "Deal." So I meet Alice Cooper, and that CD I referred to earlier that's called Mojo Gurus. The
Yep.
reason it was called that, this was before there was a band, Mojo Gurus. The reason it was called that is because it was, in my mind, I was paying tribute to my Mojo Gurus. Mojo is an old blues term. If Muddy Waters, I got my mojo working.
Yep.
It's like you got your swerve on. Your mojo is your personal, it's like your magic, right? And a guru is a spiritual leader.
Right.
So my influences were my mojo gurus.
Yeah.
Um, Also, let me digress one bit. Both the names Roxx Gang and Mojo Gurus come from me being such a T-Rex fan.
Sure.
When I was a kid, when I was just dreaming about having a band, and I would be in school, and you're writing the name of your favorite bands on your notebook and stuff. So I'm already dreaming about what am I going to call my band? And T-Rex, I loved, right?
Yep.
And I thought, and see, so on my notebook, I'm looking at T period Rex. And I put R period gang. And it sound like our gang, like
Yeah.
the our gang, like the Little Rascals,
Or rascals.
And that eventually evolved into Roxx Gang. Mojo Gurus, one of Mark Bolan's big hits over in England, really, was a song called Metal Guru, right? If there had never been a metal guru, the idea for Mojo Gurus probably would have never entered my mind.
Sure.
So, where was I before I went off into that tangent?
You had been talking about meeting Alice Cooper.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yep.
So inside in the liner notes of the CD, I listed my main men, right? And I had listed Alice as one of them. And you know, I'm you might not guess it from watching me on stage or doing an interview, but I'm really kind of a shy, believe kind of
I wouldn't have
humble,
guessed
kind of
it.
shy. And so how do you show Alice Cooper your own CD and go, hey man, this is my CD, Alice Cooper, living legend.
Right.
But I thought, well, I want to just show him how much he meant to me and that he's one of my heroes. And I showed him in the liner notes, look, man, there probably wouldn't be no Kevin Steele hadn't grown. Up on Alice Cooper.
Sure.
And he was the old scary fucking Alice Cooper was the most gracious,
Yeah.
nicest guy. I picked up these magazines at a uh, garage sale one time. There's these magazines from the 70s that came out in New York. It was called After Dark magazine. And it was kind of a, I don't want to say in this day and age, I don't want to use this word, but it catered to a certain New York showbiz kind of artsy fartsy and kind of
Sure.
maybe some of the stuff was a little effeminate, you know.
Sure.
I guess I could say that word,
No, you can say that.
right?
Say
So,
anything.
but they always had like a rock feature, and there's these. I don't know who the photographer was, but there was always these great black and white pictures of like Iggy and Alice and the New York Dolls. And so that's why I bought the stack of them was for these pictures. And over the years, I've been able to get, I got Iggy to sign his picture and Alice to sign his picture. I saw the dolls, the later day dolls and got Sylvain and David to sign
Yep.
picture. And Alice is looking through the magazine and there's a picture of Keith Moon in there. And, oh, my buddy Keith. And and the girl I was with that night, I got like pictures of Alice choking her.
Oh, no way.
And he was so cool, man.
Oh, yeah.
I left that place. He made me feel like he was like, well, maybe someday we'll play together, And I didn't want to tell him like we came this close back when in the day, I was in
Right.
Roxx Gang. Almost, I can't tell you how close we came to getting this Alice Cooper tour. And I didn't want to tell him because it's not some rocker with his story, But
Sure. Sure.
he was so nice, man.
Yeah.
And and Jack worked with Alice Cooper, as a matter of fact, on those Bob Ezrin albums. He was the engineer on those albums.
That's right. So,
So,
oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
You've kind of talked about like you grow old and it's you don't want to be one of those guys who's singing, I need your sex and I complete like I'm 52 and I grew up loving, I mean all the sex stuff and now like when I listen I'm like like for example, I like Warrant a lot, but
Mm,
the song Cherry Pie is
right,
kind of embarrassing right
right. You get to 50 something, it doesn't do it for you anymore,
now. Sure.
I mean,
But
it's natural. You're a kid. Like,
yes,
you don't want the same thing, the same television programs or movies or books or music does not appeal to you at 45 that it does at 20.
sure.
A lot of it doesn't hold up.
Right. But I think a lot of and I'm just getting into this because obviously I'm sure every interview that you ever do, people say, "Well, would you ever?" And so I'm framing it this way: is you just talked about Alice Cooper. Well, Alice Cooper goes out and still plays "I'm 18" and "Poison," and I think he would say, "Look, that's my stage guy, and the guy I am off stage is completely different than the person I am on stage." And so when you think about like where you're at musically, and I'm sure shit, like there's all these big the cruises and the big festivals, and I'm sure there are people still saying, shit,
Did you
Kevin,
hear about Tammy Down's girlfriend,
yes,
man?
oh my fucking God.
I could never go on one of those cruises.
Fuck.
You're trapped with all those people,
My,
man.
my timeline and people are blowing up my phone because I do this channel. Everybody's like, "Did you hear?" Holy shit. Yes. So that's insane. Um, but anyway, like I'm sure you still get offers. Have you ever
Constantly,
oh,
constantly.
yeah,
Every time there's a post on Facebook, somewhere in that thread is somebody going, "We need another Roxx Gang album. We need another Roxx Gang tour."
yep.
I'm sorry, but it is not going to happen.
I got you.
It's
I
never
got
going
you.
to happen.
I got you.
First of all, I would only do it with like probably the original Roxx Gang lineup. And I, I haven't talked. I mean, I haven't even talked to half of them in years, you know?
Right.
And we weren't really the best of friends when we were in a band together. And now, after all these years, like we've all gone our separate ways and have way different lives.
Yep.
And I just feel I do it just honestly, all kidding aside, I would feel silly performing a lot of those songs.
I get you.
I have been offered. I don't want us to tell you what band, but there's a 80s band that you would know. I tell you off camera. I tell you when this once we're off if you want.
Sure.
I've been offered by an 80s band that you would know that said we'll book a Roxx Gang tour. You don't even have to come to rehearsals, man. You just show up for we'll be Roxx Gang. You sing those songs, and we can book a Roxx Gang tour. And I get offers like that,
Yep.
and I get a lot of nostalgia for those times.
Sure.
And I'm not for everything that I've said here today. Like, I don't want anybody to get the idea that I'm knocking. Like, I understand how music from a certain era, how it plays a part in your life, and it may remind you of like the best time in your life, or this is the music that got me through this hard time, or this is the music, boy, those were the days, you know. I understand that, but like I was saying, a real artist, the guys who I there's guys who I like and there's guys who I respect. Okay, the guys who I respect, like they didn't stay, they evolved.
Yeah.
Even the Rolling Stones started playing blues and rhythm and blues covers, basically. Over the years, they've changed quite a bit. David Bowie was a freaking space alien, Ziggy Stardust, but he didn't stay one.
Yeah.
Like I said, David Johansen didn't stay in New York Doll his whole life. It would have been silly to see David at 50, 60 years old. I mean, I know he did the reunion tour, but even that was not at the same.
Sure. Sure.
Plus, they were such a cult, but they were such a cult hero, and they were such an influence. They may never sold a whole bunch of records, but they influenced a whole genre,
Absolutely.
you know. And I don't know. I've done a lot of reflecting this week. You know, how in the hell does David Johansen end up basically, has to have a GoFundMe page, basically, buy our t-shirt, to pay his and freaking Taylor Swift is a billionaire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Life is not fair, man.
Yeah. Right.
David Johansen, if you look his lyrics, people write off the dial. A lot of people that are musicians, right off the dials, oh, they can. But you listen to David's lyrics, man. And for a kid, he was saying something. And you listen to the David Johansen band, Lonely Tenement and Frenchette. I mean, they're like novels, man.
Yeah.
That guy was something else. I was very saddened by his death.
I wouldn't say I don't know a bunch about his solo stuff, but if you're a fan of the glam bands, I mean, you recognize that even shit before a lot of people would say it started with Kiss and Slade and the Sweet, but the Dolls were the first that to
Yeah,
the
Kiss.
first influence.
Wicked Lester was trying to be the New York Dolls, and they
Exactly,
didn't like it. They couldn't carry it, and they said we need a new direction, and they
exactly.
came up with their
Yep.
shtick.
The last album that you did with Mojo Gurus came out in 2017. It was called Gone. You've released,
Right.
I think, 4 or 5 Mojo Gurus albums.
Gone. I like ambiguous lyrics to where people might have different listeners might have different interpretations. I always like that. They say, this is what this song means to me. And I think, that's crazy. Like that's really not what but, but I see it. I dig it. And so the title of Gone was like, I was pretty sure that was going to be the last Mojo Gurus album. So
Yep.
literally it was, we're gone. Right? But in rockabilly vernacular, you say, man, that's real gone. You know, that's crazy, man. That's real gone. That's cool. And then there's in drug lingo, if you're gone, you're out. Man, that cat was gone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there's three meanings right there. And I was like, I like that.
So what are you, so since then, have you guys still been playing shows, and what is Kevin Steele up to musically, if anything, since 2017?
I have got notebooks filled with songs. Okay.
Okay.
I get a lot of pleasure out of writing songs. Okay. And sometimes it's a little discouraging because I wonder to what end? Is
Yep.
anybody, if I come up with something that in particular that I think is really good, which isn't every song, but when I come up with this is a good one, right? And I think I get a little bummed because I think, is anybody ever going to hear this? And I've got all kinds of musician friends, and I know guys, all kinds of guys, even with home studios, these days,
Yeah.
not like when we started, you can make a good recording in your bedroom. You
Yes.
know what I mean? Um, but I don't know. For me, as much enjoyment as I get out of writing, for me, being in a band was always about performing live.
Right.
Okay. That energy you get from the art, that's another thing. It's sad state of affairs. First of all, there's the age thing. Second of all, there's when I fell in love with rock and roll and I went to my first concerts and stuff, there was no such thing as it was all festival seating. So like people were standing all the way up to the stage. And
Yes.
if you had it in you, you could elbow your way up and be at freaking Steven Tyler's feet,
Yes.
right?
Oh,
Now, can you imagine as a performer the difference in the energy you pick up from there's people trying to touch you, right? And nowadays, the whole front section is people sitting.
I know.
Not only is it people sitting, but the people that can afford those front tickets, they're not even the cool people. They're the people who have enough money,
Right.
you know. Okay, back when I started backstage, you'd be what's going on backstage, man? There's drugs, there's groupies, and there was. These days, Stephen and Joe would be doing a meet and greet with a corporate meet and greet, signing autograph for some fat cat's children. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's nobody's shooting up backstage. Sex acts are not being performed, you know, and it's just so different. My first concert was everybody, and there was a cloud of reefer smoke over
Yep.
and people looked out for each other. If a cop went after somebody, everybody else kind of get in his way without really, you know, and somebody'd always pass out up front and you'd help them up. There was like a brotherhood, because you're all fans of that same band. And you could go see, back in my day, there was like, you'd see three bands, sometimes four. And a ticket, when I first started going to concerts, concert tickets were like $6.99, you
Yeah.
know? And, nowadays it's hundreds of dollars to see one band. So the only really wild rock and roll is really going on. Most of it's going on in clubs instead of by the
Totally.
time by the time most of these bands are playing big these bands, a lot of them have sold out anyways. And I don't know, it's just a whole different animal, man. It's not the same rock and roll that I got a little taste of it,
Yep.
but it was really changed for the worse even by the time I got into it. But I got a little taste of it. But these days,
And how many clubs are there for local bands or
that's another thing. Like I'm gonna go in and have, when in my day you had to carry the bands own their own PAs and lights, you know. You took a light man and a sound man when you in the A circuit clubs. And these days, it's all in-house stuff and it's all crap usually a lot of times. And you get some sound man. And I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm 60. Like I'm not gonna listen to some freaking sound man that's in his 20s telling me like, oh, your monitor, like shut the fuck up. You're telling me, or I'm gonna have some club manager coming up to me and saying, oh, you guys need to get on stage,
right,
off.
right,
It's too, it's not worth it for me.
right.
So I don't know. I got a little bit of a legacy. I never made it as far as I dreamed I would, but I don't know. I guess in some respects I made it farther than I could ever really hope for, you
And
know?
how many bands would love to have had an album that sold 250,000 copies? And,
If you sold 250,000 copies these days, you'd be in towards the top of the Billboard chart, you
and
know?
and there would be chicks and drugs all over the place because people are so damn impressed. So, has there been any talk about like reissuing things you've never done before? I know a
Yeah.
lot of these bands nowadays
So
that's
my
happening.
brother, who managed my career the whole time, and he's got a
Yep.
management company, Steel Management, and now he's got his own record label, Steel Records. And I think we're going to put out um, we're going to reissue things you never done before. It's going to have the original, all the original songs, of course.
Yep.
Then it's going to have like demos of
Yes.
all those songs, so you can see this is how it was, and then
Absolutely.
that's what it became. And
Absolutely.
with a whole bunch of new, for people who are into this stuff, there'll be a whole bunch of new, probably never before seen pictures and stuff.
Yes. Yes.
And there's an Italian label called Night of the Living Vinyl, and
Okay.
they just last year or 2 years ago released The Voodoo You Love, but very limited
Sure.
amount. But
Sure.
still, that out, things you never done before there was still vinyl in those days. So,
Yes.
but by the time The Voodoo You Love came out, not so much.
Oh,
Now that's on vinyl, and then there's another Roxx Gang album called Drinking TNT and Smoking Dynamite,
yep.
and I think they're gonna reissue that too. And
Well, when that
like,
when that happens, because I've done some unboxing videos, like I don't know the band Wild Side Under the Influence. I just did a video on unboxing and kind of reviewing. So I would love to do something like that dedicated to things you've never done before or the voodoo you love. So anyway, if that ever happens, you have an open invite to come on and promote it and whatever you have coming out.
all right, thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
I'll
Um,
take you up, probably take you up on
Hey man, anytime, anytime. So, is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to throw out there? Anything you want to promote, or just anything to finish up?
Well, I kind of disappeared. I never really talked about this before either, but I did let people know a couple of years ago. I did say that I was having some medical issues.
Okay,
So listen to this shit. This is some crazy shit. Started getting flashes of pain in my jaw. I thought it was like a dental thing, right? I'd grit my teeth. I wouldn't even tell anybody about it, right? And it'd be gone in a couple of seconds. But it felt like somebody was sticking an ice pick in a nerve in my jaw, right? I mean, it was extreme. It was excruciating. One night it came and stayed for an hour.
right.
I thought I was going to have, I wanted to kill myself, right? So now I get x-rays, nothing. I try to see a neurologist. It's hell to get in to see a neurologist. Somehow I got in to see a neurosurgeon. This chick, the doctor's assistant, she's like, half my, probably not even half my age. And she goes, I tell her what the deal is, and she says, well, you've either had trauma to your jaw, which I knew I had not, or you've got a tumor and you're going to have brain surgery.
Oh my God.
What? So I get an MRI. Sure enough, there's a golf ball sized tumor on my brain, right? They say about judging by the size of it, it's been growing in there for 20 years. Okay. You got these nerves on the side of your face called a trigeminal nerve, and the tumor was pressing up against the nerve, and that's what was giving me this excruciating pain. Right.
Right.
So now I go home and I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that I'm going to have brain surgery, right? They're going to cut open my freaking skull, right? And diddle with my brain. So I find this surgeon that I'm comfortable with, but he says, this is late October, and he says, but I'm booked till December, right? They give me these drugs, these anti-seizure drugs to take care of the pain, right? I'm doing some research of my own, and it says people have committed suicide over this pain. Right? Telling you, I've never felt anything like it in my life, and I've never suffered from migraines or anything. So it was so. So I'm at home one day. I was on my laptop, and all of a sudden I get this sensation up my left arm, and then I start feeling nauseous. And then I called up my old lady and I said, "You need to get home because I don't know what's going on. Something's wrong, bad wrong." Right? She calls up my brother. If you knew me, I was just going. It would be no surprise that I was going. Just put me in bed. I'll be fine.
Right.
She calls up my brother. Call an ambulance. It turns out my old lady rides in the ambulance and like they're saying his vitals are really fucking low. Right? I had what's called a brain bleed. It's like a stroke. A blood vessel breaks in your head. Okay. Now I'm in for a whole nother world of pain because as your body absorbs the blood from the broken blood vessel, some of it hits your brain. And for like another 3 weeks, I get in the hospital and they go, we can give you Tylenol, we can give you Oxycontin, which I'm familiar with, or we can give you morphine, which I'm also familiar with. And I said, I've been a rock and roll singer for like 45 years, give me I got a high tolerance to drugs. Give me the morphine. But when they release, and that did the trick, of course, but when they released me, they didn't give me anything. So I go through that. Then I have to have brain surgery, right? So then that's another couple of weeks after that. He got the whole thing. When they cut a tumor away from your brain, they have to do it in layers. And sometimes they have to leave a little rather than err on the side of nicking something that should not be
Yeah.
nicked, right?
Yeah.
So my surgeon came out and said, he was like, oh, my old lady said, oh, he was beaming. And he said, we got the whole thing. And I just, about a couple of weeks ago, had my 2-year MRI, and they said there's had there been regrowth, I'd have to get radiation treatments. And dude,
Right.
they didn't even have to like shave. They didn't even shave even a patch in my head. I could feel a hairline. I felt like a thin line of bristle
Right.
afterwards. But yeah, so I went through that and I was like, I didn't really want to talk about it to people. And it put me out of commission for,
Sure.
when I first got home, I could barely walk. I
Yeah.
was walking with a walker and stuff. Now I'm get back 100%. I don't feel like mentally or physically, I don't think but that was fucking hairy. I asked my surgeon, okay, doc, give me worst case scenario. Because, well, you could stroke out and die on the operating table, or you could wake up and half your body, left hand side of your body, could be paralyzed. Which that's what really, I was more scared of that than I was of dying because there's way worse ways of dying than under anesthesia.
Yeah.
Like I would have never known.
Yeah.
But if I woke up and half my body was, I don't think I could live that way,
Right.
After the life I've led,
Yeah.
to be like that would be too much.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to say everything is 100% here doing this interview with you. And I don't know, I'll be honest with you, I don't know what the future is going to bring for me musically. Like I said, I've never stopped writing. I've got some songs I'm pretty proud of, but I've got nothing concrete going. Is because it's really kind of a like, is it worth it? You know,
I'm
I
sure.
don't know. Some days I feel like it is. I really miss performing a lot, and I'll go see it. Went and saw the. You're probably familiar just from the news. We had some bad hurricanes down this
Yep.
way a couple months ago.
Yep.
Right before the hurricanes, I went to see the Black Crowes with their new album and everything. And
Sure.
the one thing I took away from the show was I want to be up there again. you
Yeah.
know?
Right.
But I don't know. I just don't know. I can't tell you. I don't know myself.
Well, I just from myself and the people that I talk to, there's a lot, at least in my crew of people that would love to see you, get back on the stage and whether it's with the Mojo Gurus, and I know you said Roxx Gang would never happen, but that album, Things You've Never Done Before, that was a really important album to me, and I get what there are songs on that album that right now that I'm like, ah. But there's also songs, Red Rose, Ball and Chain, that I can still put on right now and be like transported back to 1988, 1989, and it was a special time. And so I just to be able to talk to you about your career and such an important album for me. And I know you've done all the other stuff, and I have a bunch of the Mojo Guru stuff. I mean, I was buying everything from Paris that you were putting out. So I followed your career pretty extensively, but it's been an honor to have you on, man.
Thank you. It means a lot to me.
Absolutely. Again, if you ever want to come back on, or if you're there's something that you're doing that you'd like to promote, you're welcome to come on. And I'm just wishing the best for you and hoping that you get back on the stage.
Thank you, man.